Hey, look at all those smiles. Got it. Welcome, everyone. It's so nice to see all those smiling faces joining us tonight. We know that this is a topic that's near and dear to not only our hearts, but I believe that we're really sitting in a position or a place right now that we represent our ancestors, because that is literally how they survived. Generation after generation, they have been gardening and canning and preserving and putting things aside for the longer season winters that we do have here. And I just know that somehow Mother Nature is giving us all this, I won't even call it a gentle nudge this year. This is a full out push to pay attention and to really do what needs to be done for yourself and for your family, to bring things into an abundant state where there's everything you need right now that's available everywhere around, certainly in the rural areas. If you live in the city, then it does mean a day trip out, and that's not all bad. That can be an adventure too. Sometimes just knowing that, you know, you're not necessarily going to pick from your garden, but going to the little farmers markets and understanding that somebody picked it from theirs, and that you picking it up is just supporting what they're doing, and it's supporting your family at the same time. So I think that's a beautiful thing. The other thing is that, you know, the message that was kind of given tonight is that we are all being very much defined as starseeds. And we are on a planet or a planet. We were planted here and we're starseeds. So we're as much a part of nature as anything else is, or anything else that grows and has life on this planet. We are maybe considered to be on the higher end of the intelligence scale, but I think at the very base and core of our nature, we're still connected and grounded to Mother Earth, and just the essence of life is in each and every one of us. And the food that we are given and the food that we are meant to share and partake of should also have that same vibrancy and essence in it. So I'm really excited that Karen has brought her friend, that this is her passion, this is her love, this is her life purpose. Nothing better than hearing it from someone who is that connected to the whole process, that they can share the wealth and the wisdom with us. So there they are. All right. Yeah. We're just going to start our prayer of unity. And if everybody just wants to take a couple of nice deep breaths, bringing in that energy of the Heavenly Father and drawing it in all the way down until it merges and meets with the earthly mother. And just knowing that the two, as they are now being revealed to you, are doing a dance that takes place in our heart. And that dance is one of celebration right now. It's one of unification, bringing us all back together after seasons and seasons of separation. And we just ask that what is being shared tonight would nurture not only our souls, but also our table, in that we are part of co-creating and manifesting for our own wellness and well-being. And for that, we are truly thankful and grateful. And just release any tension that you're holding on to right now. You know what? This is a different kind of family here. I was going to say it's family, and some of you might get more tense if we call it that. We're going to say that this is the kind of family we all wished we had, and that we've all dreamed of and envisioned for ourselves. That you are welcome at each and every one of our table. You are welcome in our homes. You are welcome in our hearts. And wherever the journey takes us from there, it can only blossom into something beautiful. So welcome, welcome, everyone. And with that, I'm going to introduce Karen Sheldon, who is one of our incredible core members. She's part of our admin team. And Karen has been kind of a little sleeper cell out there. She lives in Quebec. So in some ways, she kind of felt a little bit separated from what we are doing here in Ontario. And yet, as time unfolded and as fate would have it, she's starting to realize that it doesn't matter where you are on this planet. Your purpose is part of creating something special for humanity and participating in bringing it to that abundant state of everybody is not only nurtured and well fed physically by the food we eat, but also by the soul. We're nurturing and feeding each other's souls here too. So, all right, Miss Karen, I'm going to turn it over to you and just sit back and enjoy the blessings. And you can introduce your friend so that everyone gets to know the story that's there and how incredibly special all of this is today. So thank you for showing up the way you do.
No problem. Happy to do it. So good evening, everyone. This is my friend, garden guru and mentor, Mary Ellen Kirby. We met by fluke. Yeah, not. Part of the grand design, and I'm having loads of fun learning about gardening from her, canning, and we can talk about anything and everything for about 6 to 8 hours worth of time. Yeah. So I'm going to turn the Zoom meeting over to Mary Ellen, and she'll get started and share her knowledge with you.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm not sure exactly who all I'm talking to because I can see Donna, but oh, there we go. There's a few more. Hello. I'm used to doing the Zoom meetings. I don't really like them, but that's the way I've been working for the last 2.5 years. I'm a school board commissioner as well as all the other hats that I wear. So all our meetings have been remote. So yeah, Zoom is good, but I don't really like it at the same time. So yeah, for a farmer, it's kind of a one of those wild ideas out there in the ether somewhere to be able to talk to people so far away. And yet I think that's a necessary thing that has to be done in order to get through what's happening and probably what's about to happen. So Karen gave me she called it a mind map. Mm-hmm. And there's several, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different categories on there from seed to supper. I'm going to say a few things about it to start with. The very important first place you need to start is at the bottom, and that's with your soil, which really, we've got fertilizers and organic compost on there, but actually you really need to start with soil, with good soil. You need to know what good soil is. It's not dirt. There's lots of that in the world, but dirt is not soil. So you need to be able to figure out what your soil is, get it tested somewhere so that you know what you're working with. There are ways to augment your soil. Most of our soil is demineralized. I know Quebec and Ontario have a lack of iodine in our soils. So that's one of the reasons why we have iodized table salt, because iodine, a lack of iodine can lead to all kinds of thyroid issues. So you need to start there. That's the very basic part. And from there, you can branch out into various ways to fertilize. I'll be throwing out a few permaculture terms probably through the evening before I get done. And one of the best ways to do it is what they call chop and drop. So you don't pull weeds out by the roots, you chop them off at the base and you lay them down as mulch around the plants that you're growing. Karen and I have not done that this summer. We tried to weed, and to be honest, the harder we weed, the more they come back double strike. So had we employed the chop and drop method, it probably would have been better, because when that decomposes into the soil, some of those I don't know if anybody's taking notes, but I'm going to throw a few names and books, different resources out at you. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce the name. Aaron Reed Pfeiffer, P-H-E-I-F-F-E-R, I believe. He wrote a very small book quite a few decades ago called Weeds and What They Tell Us. So if you can identify the weeds that are growing in the patch of soil that you want to farm or garden on, you can tell very easily what your soil is deficient in. Mr. Pfeiffer is one of the people that I believe is connected somewhat to Rudolf Steiner. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with that name. Rudolf Steiner is quite well-known Swiss teacher that started something called biodynamic farming, which uses a lot of very holistic and interesting methods to farm, planting by the moon phases and various additives that he puts in his soil. So that's one way to get to know your soil. I would say before you do anything else, that's what you need to do. The next thing you need to do, which also is not really on the mind map here, is to build up a library. You really, really need to have a lot of basic books, because although the Zoom is nice and the instant access via Google, whatever, is nice, I'm not alone in suspecting that that is going to be curtailed or go away entirely in the not too distant future. We have too much connectivity, us little peasants on the ground, for the powers that be, and they don't like that, and they're going to find a way to interfere with it, however they do it. So I would say have your hard copies, get yourself a really, really good library. If anybody wants to contact Karen, I can put together a list of what I consider like the basic books that you really need to have in the library in order to cover all your bases. And don't forget, when you're building your library, it's not just the how-to stuff that you want, it's also the why-to. Those, you know, they don't necessarily look like manuals or textbooks. Those might be something else entirely. So I will include both of those things. If anybody expresses an interest in having a list, I can include both of those things. Most of my knowledge, such as it is, and it evolves, it grows all the time, because I'm curious and I want to know why things work the way they work. And I don't like disrupting what's going on naturally if I can help it. So I grew up on a farm. My husband and I have been farming off and on most of our lives. That's mostly the way he made his living for our family. So he grew up on a farm. So we both have long roots in the agricultural tradition. So I don't know how many of you ladies do have grandparents, maybe, or parents that farmed. If any of you have any direct connection to the soil, there's certain things you pick up over the years. How can I put it? That are almost instinctive. You only learn those things by doing. You can't find them in a book. And you have to actually get down and get your hands dirty and get involved with we farm livestock as well as, you know, other, or the big garden and so on. You actually have to learn by doing it. That's the only way to solidify that kind of knowledge. Sort of temporal, abstract knowledge is great. It feels great to exercise the brain cells, but it doesn't do the entire job. You really need to be willing to get down and dirty, I guess, and very physical. Seed saving, your organic-based seeds. Again, if any of you are interested, I can include with the list of books. I can include some of my sources where I get seeds. I do a little bit of seed saving, the easier stuff like cucumbers, tomatoes, squash, pumpkins, that sort of thing. Those are very easy to seed. Beans, easy to start with. It gets a little complicated when you get into things like brassicas and you know, carrots, beets, that kind of stuff. That's a much more complicated process. I've been fortunate to learn from somebody who does that for a living. So he had a little seed company up until recently. One of the things I learned from my friend is that it's important to get open pollinated. So a good seed catalog will tell you that the seeds are open pollinated. They usually put an OP beside the variety. If you're buying hybrid seeds, hybrid vigor is really is a thing, and hybrid seeds are great. The problem is they're a one-generation thing. You can save the seeds from a hybrid tomato. You can plant those seeds next year. You can get a tomato plant. You just have no idea what kind of a tomato is going to grow on it. So if you have a favorite variety of, say, a plum tomato for saucing, or a small salad tomato, a cherry tomato, if you have a favorite variety, you want to be able to replicate that year after year after year. And the nice part about having your own seed and planting that is that it becomes adapted to your soil and your climate conditions, your weather conditions. Those seeds have a lot of, they have a lot of potential to mutate and grow according to the conditions that they're in. The hybrid seeds are designed to give uniform results no matter where they're planted. So the only reason I'm not real crazy about hybrid seeds, and most of what we plant is a heritage variety of whatever vegetable we're growing, is simply because I like to have the adventure of saving the seed and planting it the next year and seeing how it works. Again, I will include a number of resources on that seed saving specifically in that list that I will do up for Karen. Yeah, storage. I see organized storage there. Yeah, definitely. You need to be labeling everything, and you need to know how to store your seeds. The big enemy of seeds is moisture. So you need to be very dry. So this is where you might come in with good Ziploc bags or Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers in with your seed. Most carrot and onion seeds don't keep for more than a couple of years. Bean seeds, corn seeds, we planted some corn this year, right? We saw the corn today. It's up past our knees, which is good. We did it mostly as an experiment. That corn seed is more than 10 years old. It's an open pollinated variety. Now, we planted it too late. It's not going to grow corn. We won't be able to save the seed for next year. But the other thing that's important is if you're saving your own seed, do not ever plant all of your seed in 1 year. You need to save some back. You need to keep it back because nature is really unpredictable and you have no idea what's going to happen. You might lose your entire crop. So you need to have some of that seed saved back enough to plant the second year. So that's why good storage conditions are really like crucial, vital. You can't do it without it. We've got gardens. Pretty well everybody can garden, even people living in high rises. If you've got a balcony, you can garden a little bit in containers. It's not optimal. It's not the best. It's not like having a plot of ground, but I have noticed in our larger surrounding community here, there are now a lot of community gardens where people who live in town can go and rent for a very low, like $5 for a season. They can go and rent a garden plot where they can grow whatever it is they want, flowers, vegetables, whatever. A very important part of my garden is gardening for the pollinators. I don't know how many of you know, but our bugs are extremely under threat. If we lose the power of our pollinators, and I'm talking native pollinators, I'm not talking European honeybees that were brought here in the 1600s with the first settlers. Those are an introduced species. And while we all enjoy honey, that's great, but they don't do half the work of pollinating as our own native pollinators do. And it's a very large group of insects and hummingbirds in our case. So a large part of my gardening is making sure that I am attracting and supporting the pollinators to come into my garden, because when you do that, you get better yields of whatever it is you've planted. Plus, who doesn't want to look at beautiful flowers? I mean, me, that's, you know, the vegetable garden feeds my belly. The flower garden feeds my heart. So, and I think both of those things are important. So I would encourage, there's lots of literature out there. I could include some of those as well in the list. Greenhouses, I'm not that familiar with greenhouses. We have plans and some of the material set aside to build one this fall. Fingers crossed that happens. Yeah, so I won't presume to give you a lot of information on greenhouses. There's lots of interesting ways to do it. Sol Viva is the name of a book. A woman in Rhode Island wrote this book a couple of decades ago, and it inspired me. She did some very out-of-the-box thinking with her greenhouse. She raised chickens in her greenhouse, as well as all the vegetables she could eat. She used some of the greenhouse to heat her house. It's an extremely like I said, inspirational book to read. And although you might not be able to replicate everything that she did, I plan to use some of her ideas and her design when I do my own greenhouse. So you never know where you're going to find little nuggets of inspiration, I think. I want to tell you about a market garden. Karen and I canned tomatoes last week from a couple of friends of mine who bought their little farm, a 13-acre farm in a village not far from where I live. Neither one of them had a farming background, not at all. They bought this little place and they decided they were going to farm. So the first young man, he has been job free and working the farm full time for 1.5 years. And his partner, just I think in April, just as things are starting to heat up in the whole greenhouse and gardening business, he was able to quit his full-time job as well. So for two boys that had absolutely no idea of what to do with a farm, just knew that they wanted out of the rat race and to learn how to farm, to now 6 years later, supporting both of them full-time. And I think they have, at last count, they have 5 greenhouses. They have all sorts of interesting ways. It's totally organic. They certified organic. They have all sorts of interesting ways to succession crop. So when they plant radishes, when the radishes come out, then they plant the next crop in the same bed. So they're getting a lot of yield out of a small space. And it's something that everybody could aspire to do, that, the whole succession planting thing, so that your garden beds are full and producing from the earliest possible moment in the spring to the last possible moment in the fall. And they've got that down pat. So they learned a lot of their technique from people like Elliot Coleman, who farms in Maine. He has year-round greenhouses in Maine. Any of his books would be helpful for your library. He's actually in a bit colder zone than we are. We're 4B, and I think he's 4A where he is. So he's actually colder than where we are here in southern Quebec. Anyway, he's a great resource. I would encourage any of his, the Winter Garden Handbook is one of the ones that I found really helpful. Anyway, it used to be that if you didn't have a farm in your family, or you weren't brought up on a farm, you didn't have much chance of success at being a farmer. And that's not the case anymore. The largest growing segment of agriculture in the United States is actually small farms under 10 acres farmed by women. That's the fastest growing agricultural sector in the United States as of a couple of years ago. I haven't seen recent statistics, but I don't think it's probably that much different right now anyway. So greenhouse market garden production is possible. This summer, early this spring, the boys at that farm, they installed something like, I don't know what, I think they said 5,000 different fruiting. So they installed fruiting bushes, and most of those will start producing next year. And they will be doing a pick your own, as well as their own market gardening. And they go to 4 farmers markets every week. And they do a subscription basket. So they have customers that get their weekly basket full of vegetables. So next year they will be adding to that. They'll be adding the pick your own: strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, haskap. I don't know if they've got gooseberries, but anyway, the currants. You'll be able to pick all your own stuff there, which is really, it's nice to have the baskets delivered to your door, but I think one of the things we're really missing in this era is a connection with where our food comes from. So if you can actually go out somewhere and pick it yourself, you know darn well where it came from. And it makes it taste better. I can't explain to you what the difference is, but there is a difference, wouldn't you agree? Yeah, there is definitely a difference when you have an intimate relationship with your food, other than just putting it in your mouth. There's an entire world of taste and satisfaction. Yeah, it's just, I know it sounds I know it sounds really weird, but it's the truth. So what we do mostly for fertilizer for our garden is we have sheep, mostly sheep. And so, oh, lovely, thank you. Yeah. So we have a large barn where we house the sheep loose so they can run in and out as they please at will. And most of them in the middle of a blizzard prefer to be outside. They don't really like the barn that much. We prefer it when it comes lambing time. It's just easier. So we have this big barn with a very thick bedding pack. So we use we go around in the dark of night in the fall in our villages close to our home, and we pick up several hundred bags of leaves that people have raked off their lawn that the municipality will come and pick up and take to the landfill site of all the stupid things in the world. And we take the leaves home. And that's the base of the bedding pack, because leaves don't let that much water seep up from the ground. So we put a thick layer of leaves. And then to keep the leaves from moving, we put down a layer of wood shavings. And then on top of that, we put the straw, which is where they kind of like to nest. So you can imagine after that, usually the bedding pack usually goes into the barn, it gets cleaned out in September, October. The bedding pack goes into the barn about, as soon as it's cleaned out. And then it sits there for a year. And as it's sitting there, it's actually composting from the underneath. And so then when we clean it out, my husband piles it and moves the pile a couple of times a year. It continues to compost. So when we spread that compost, it smells so good, you almost want to put it in your mouth. Karen's laughing, but it does not smell like manure. It's been composted down into the most beautiful, fluffy soil. My son and daughter-in-law moved home from Alberta in 2020. They installed a garden this year for the first time in their new place. They built raised beds, and that's all they put in the raised bed. Well, no, not quite. They put sticks and twigs and pieces of old wood, trees that had fallen down in the bottom. And then they put a layer of wood shavings, I think. And then they put our compost. And you should see their garden. I've never seen plants as big as, they have plants that have almost taken over their backyard out of these boxes. So we know it's really good stuff. We also try to use a bit of kelp. Kelp it's expensive, but if you're using it in raised beds and not broadcasting it over a quarter of an acre garden, then you're not sort of wasting it on pathways or whatever. So we use kelp quite a bit. We can buy kelp at our local feed store. So we feed it to our sheep. They love it. And so some of that mineral is being excreted in the urine and the manure. So that goes onto our land, but then we also add the kelp itself. It's you can buy that in small quantities anywhere. So if any of you are growing a garden, I highly recommend that you make sure you've got kelp somewhere. Where are we going with this? Fertilizers, yeah, water sources, okay. That's been a big bugaboo for us. We built our home on my parents' farm 33 years ago. We moved in on the 9th of June and the well went dry on the 1st of July. And I had 4 little kids. So you can imagine the laundry, and I had to pull laundry out everywhere. We hauled water all summer. We thought we had it. It rained quite a bit in October, so we thought we were safe with the well again. My husband hooked the well back up because, by the end of October, you're getting frozen water pipes from the tank we had in the backyard. And oh my God. Anyway, he hooked it back up near the end of October. It was after Thanksgiving when he hooked it up. By Christmas Eve, we ran out of water again. So we've had water issues at our place for 33 years. Finally, in 2020, we ran out of water, in June. And because we've had 2 years of a drought here, and we had to install an artesian well, extremely expensive. But we did not disconnect our old well, which will run into the house on gravity. So when the power goes off, the artesian well is useless. My husband has it fixed up so that we have an option to go down into the basement and fill up jugs or pails from the water that's gravity fed into our basement, because he's put a tap on it so that we can do it. We also have rainwater collection barrels. So if you've got plants in planters that you're watering, please don't use city water that has God knows what in it besides the chlorine. I think they probably use other chemicals away. Yeah, fluoride, yeah, and chlorine. Your plants, I mean, they need the water, but they're not going to be real happy about those two things. So if you can save rainwater, if you're in an urban and you can save rainwater some way, I'd highly recommend that. That's really the best thing for your plants. Don't forget also that you can use gray water. So if you don't have a dishwasher and you wash your dishes in a pan, you can use that. There's little bits of food, a little bit of soap. If you're using a good dishwashing liquid that's an organic, made of organic compounds, then you should be able to use that on your plants, especially house plants or shrubs. That's really good sources of water without drawing down the potable water sources. Like, use what nature gives you, basically, is what I'm saying. We don't need to keep reinventing the wheel. Mother Nature did a really good job in the first place. Tractors, equipment, planting tools, rototillers, cultivators. Okay, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a example from my own. See, we were very late. We have a very, how big is that garden, Karen? It's 100 and something feet by 80 feet wide, probably. It's huge. It's almost like a quarter of an acre or whatever, or maybe it is more than that. I don't know. So the only option for that piece of ground is for my husband to use the tractor. The tractor compacts the soil. And every time he tills that, it brings new weed seeds to the surface that then germinate and cause us problems. There's a saying that weeds, 1 year's seeds equals 7 years weeds. And that is probably a generous understatement, actually. So if you can just not disturb the soil, so much the better. So there's a number of different techniques you can use. One of them is that permaculture chop and drop, so to the soil. So if that's the case, you really don't need much except a hoe. A lot of the market gardeners in my neighborhood use, what is that called? I don't have one, and I really kind of like one, a broad fork. So a broad fork is actually that. It's quite wide, maybe 3 feet or 2.5 feet. Comes with a long handle, and it comes with really long tines on it. And what you do is not dig at anything. You simply plunge it into the ground and rock it back and forth so that you can have room to plant seeds, or it just aerates the soil. It allows the water to get down in so that your soil is not compacted without actually disturbing the soil, the biology of the soil. I'm told, I've read in many places that if you take 1 teaspoon of soil, there is something like 1 billion life forms in that 1 teaspoon of real living soil, not necessarily a field that's been tilled and plowed and fertilized and chemically doctored or whatever, but in good living soil, you're going to have 1 billion little creatures living in a tablespoon's worth of soil. So we don't want to disturb them, because they're actually, everybody thinks the fertilizer or, you know, the compost, whatever, is what feeds the plants. And that's a common misconception. It's not that at all. It is all the little microscopic bacteria and fungi that are in the soil that the plant actually feeds on. So the more you disturb them, the less you're going to produce, the less your soil is going to be what's needed. So I've got some help coming this fall, and we're going to be building some big raised beds so that we don't have to till that soil. I can't continue to garden. I'm 60 plus. I can't continue to garden trying to keep ahead of the weeds. Like I need those raised beds where we're not going to disturb the soil except to plant the seeds. So this is a bit of a transition for us. We're going to transition into that. I'm trying to install a permaculture orchard. There's an excellent documentary about a permaculture orchard near the Quebec-New York border. I'd encourage you all to go look for that and watch it. It's a wonderful, wonderful little documentary. How this fellow bought a down and out, almost ready to be bulldozed commercial apple orchard and turned it around in a few years. And it's like the most amazingly productive place that you can imagine now, just by changing the techniques, the way he was managing things and doing things. So he also uses very little sort of disturbing the soil or tractors to run sprayers or any of the things that you would normally find. Big mowing machines, the sort of things you would normally find in a commercial orchard. As far as equipment goes, hand tools are probably the best, unless you're really working large plots. Go for your hand seeds. Yeah, absolutely. Hand tools. Yeah, those.
Forget the manicures. You're not getting those.
Yeah, go for your hand tools.
A good nail brush.
Yep.
You're good to go.
Hose, spades, a good garden fork to help you dig your potatoes.
Or a Jack Russell.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, exactly. Gardeners, anybody who wants to can be a gardener, for goodness sake. Seed starters, the friend that I was telling you about that has the heritage or open pollinated seed company, he often started hundreds of plants, and then he would put up a sign on his driveway and people would just flock in there. He had a couple of places in town where he also sold his plants, so he could start, he would sell one plant for the price of a package of seeds. So obviously that's a more lucrative thing than just selling the seeds, because for any of us that were diligent, we only had to buy the seeds once from him, because then you save your own seeds for the next year and you don't have to go back and buy them again. So he was kind of putting himself out of business in a way, if you look at it that way. Yeah, I'm not sure. Growers, maintenance, harvesters. We have a very large contingent here in southern Quebec of foreign workers. We have a lot of strawberries here. We have a lot of Christmas tree plantations, and almost all the employees on some of those places are foreign workers that are here from Mexico,
Guatemala,
a lot of Guatemalans. Yeah, like, anyway, I'm not sure how we've gotten to the point where we're too good to grow our own food. I don't know how we've gotten here. It's a blessing. It's a calling. It's not a career. It's not a career. You retire from a career. Real farmers and gardeners never retire. They die with their boots on. You just don't retire from something that is that important to you. It's part of who you are, you know? So yeah, I have mixed feelings. If it wasn't for these people coming here and helping with this, I'm not sure that many of us could afford to eat from the grocery stores, to be honest, because yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other story to get into. And then we've got preserving. So that's what Karen and I have been doing for quite a while. Tomatoes.
and there's more to be done because we
a lot
picked
more.
2 big dishes today of string beans.
Yep.
Got to decide what we're doing with those, freezing or
And
canning.
I weighed the cucumbers that we brought down. So we have, I think I weighed out 12.5 pounds of cucumbers. So something has to be done with those. I like that in nature, there's no such thing as waste. So whatever doesn't get used at our house goes out to my chicken coop, and the chickens love it. So what doesn't get sent there gets sent up to the pigs. We raise pastured pork. All our garden waste gets turned into either eggs or bacon, one or the other. Win-win. I don't just. So if you don't have either of those things, then you better have a compost pile and be feeding worms. That's the other, like, nature wastes nothing. And I think if we're actually going to succeed at any of this, that needs to be the template. We need to watch what nature does, and then we need to farm and garden that way. And if you'll notice, just look, nature nowhere does monocultures ever, never. That is anti-nature. So our monoculture farming is doomed to failure, in my opinion. At some point, it's going to fail because this is not the natural way. This is not the way nature does it. Monoculture farming has made food cheap. It's made it affordable. It's made it ubiquitous. Food is everywhere, or what they call food, but it's anti-natural. It's not natural. It goes against nature, the way that kind of farming is done. And it's this sort of, it's indicative of the Western reductionist, take everything apart into little pieces, that mindset, that sort of scientific mindset. You can't break everything down into little pieces. It doesn't work that way. Nature doesn't work that way. So we need to watch what nature does, and we need to emulate that as closely as possible. Because when we work with nature instead of against it and try to conquer it and beat it down so that it does what we want it to do, the rewards are amazing. 12.5 pounds, I told you, of the cucumbers. Yeah. So that 12.5 pounds of cucumbers with all the seeds that are in those cucumbers came from 3 plants. So 3 seeds gave me 12.5, and the cucumbers are still coming. They're not done. So nature already knows how to do this very well. There is nothing we can teach nature. And we have to remove ourselves from the hubris of thinking that we can tell nature what to do. We have to remove that from our lives, from our perceptions. And we just have to sit and watch and learn about how nature does things, because she's extremely generous. When you get 12, and I'll be very surprised if out of those 3 cucumber seeds that I don't get up to 30 pounds of cucumbers to do whatever I want with. I mean, that is just, how do you beat that? Like, we can't do that. That's exponential return. Like, give me a stock that'll do that. The stock market, it's not going to happen. So yeah, we need to stop thinking that we know best, and we need to take our lessons from nature. That's just, yeah. So this is how Karen, yeah, this is sort of how we met. I've started a group of like-minded women. We get together every couple of weeks, and I call it Thrifty Kitchen Workshops. And we sort of encourage each other, and we try new things, and we figure out how to eat real food and not spend quite so much at the grocery store. Because you know what? You vote with your dollars. Everybody thinks you go into a voting booth and you mark a ballot and that's how you vote, and that's not true. You vote with your money. So whatever you're buying, you're supporting. Plain and simple. So if you're supporting the industrial food system out of one side of your pocket, while out of the other side you're saying, oh, this is bad, this is not good, well, time to put your money where your mouth is. So you have to support what you want with more than words. You have to support it. That's my feeling anyway. You have to support it with your actions, and not just with good slogans. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm sounding kind of preachy, so I'll get off that one right now. It's a subject I'm really passionate about, in case you hadn't noticed.
This is what I mean. We can get off on these topics, and we discuss this while we're gardening or canning, or,
yeah,
you know, hulling out 35 pounds of cucumbers to make relish or make pickles.
Make pickles, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice pickles. Did you show them the pickles?
Absolutely, I did.
Oh yeah.
Nice little pickle that I can't open till
you have to wait. You have to wait a little bit. Let them develop their flavor. Yeah. So at the Thrifty Kitchen workshops, we talk about some of these issues around food. That's quite a large part of the conversation. And then we talk about thrifty to me means the way grandma did it. Because both my grandmothers or grandparents, sets of my grandparents, whom I was really blessed to have well into adulthood. So I was able to learn things from them. Both of them lived through the Great Depression and a World War. So they knew lots of things that we need to figure out how to get some of that knowledge back, because it's being lost. It's dying off and it's being lost. And I'm not sure how our children and grandchildren are going to eat if we don't revive some of that. So at our workshops, we've talked about jams.
Yep.
We're going to do a canning workshop with peaches here in the very near future with Ontario peaches. We're going to do a dehydrating workshop. We're going to do a lactofermentation workshop. We're going to ferment either carrots or cabbage. I'm not sure which we're going to do. I have a friend coming in to help with that. One of our recent ones, we learned how to make our own sourdough, so that if the yeast situation, as in 2020, when you could not buy yeast in a grocery store for love nor money, if that ever happens again, well, at least we can still make bread. That same workshop, I demonstrated my grain mill. I have an electric grain mill, and I have a storage of several kilos of wheat berries so that I can make my own flour, which is better for you, way better. It tastes better. You know that you're getting something real when you eat something made with fresh flour. The taste is incredible.
Because she cooked stuff, she baked stuff with that real flour, and we just kind of went,
oh,
and then we had real butter.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, the real as opposed to what's passed off as food in the grocery stores is quite different. It's very different. So we've done canning. We're going to do pickling, I think. I'm also probably going to do, I have a supply of Mylar bags, which are great to store the forever foods in. So salt, you need to have a good storage of salt. Sugar keeps for a long time. There's a whole list of what I call forever foods. These are foods that you can store in a good, well-stocked pantry indefinitely. They will keep indefinitely. And so you'll never be at the mercy of, oh my God, are they going to close the grocery stores this time when they lock everybody in? You know, you've still got a well-stocked pantry. And that's something else I learned from my grandmother. We all think with our pantry. Do you have a pantry cupboard here?
No.
Not really?
No.
Okay. Most apartments are new built construction. They'll have they'll brag about having a pantry, right? And it's the size of one cupboard, like one cupboard door. And you pull it out and it's floor to ceiling and it's got shelves in it. And that's what they call a pantry. My grandmother's pantry was all of her basement and another room besides, right? A pantry used to be, I think back a long time ago, they called it the keeping room because it was cooler than the rest of the house. And that's where you kept everything, was in that pantry. And I really think if we're going to have any kind of security and not be at the mercy of grocery tycoons. Do you know that Loblaws in the last, is it 20 months? Anyway, since the start of the pandemic, their profits have increased exponentially. So what we're facing at the grocery stores is not necessarily inflation, it's greedflation, because somebody's putting that extra money in their pocket. Really, seriously. So I don't want to take hard-earned money that we've sweated and bled for and give it to some CEO so that he can buy his third yacht. That goes against the grain for me, because why is he more important than the people that actually grew the food? Because in our society, we value things by how much we pay for them. And let me tell you, farmers are hurting. We're hurting bad because we're getting squeezed. The stuff in the grocery stores is selling for ridiculous prices. And at the same time, all the middlemen that buy our produce are knocking the prices down. And at the same time, all the input costs are going up, like exponentially, like the grocery store produce is going up. So farmers are really stuck in the middle. And the best way around, the best way to ensure that we have actual farmers farming and feeding people is to go directly to farmers as much as possible and buy whatever it is. And that might curtail your choices. You're not going to find too many locally grown strawberries in January. So while they're in season and they're not that expensive, get extras and put them away. So you can have frozen strawberries over ice cream in January, or you can have strawberry jam on your toast and you can still smell that and taste that nice fresh strawberry flavor. And you're not buying waterlogged, pesticide-ridden stuff from Chile or Mexico or California or wherever. It's going to become more and more urgent that more and more of us can feed ourselves. And by doing that, we're also in a position to help. So one of the things I like about permaculture is the 3 pillars of permaculture, or the 3 basic tenets of permaculture. So if you're a permaculturist, your first mandate is care of the earth. It's the base we all rest on. If we abuse her, we're done. We're done as a species. We're finished. And a lot of other species along with us. So the first mandate, the first imperative is care of the earth. The second one is care of people. The third one is return of surplus. So permaculture doesn't encourage hoarding, and hoarding is not storing up for your own use. Hoarding is when you go and buy something or whatever that's in short supply, and you deliberately stockpile it and keep it out of circulation, and then you try to sell it for a profit. That's the technical definition of hoarding. Keeping a well-stocked pantry is not hoarding. That's called food insurance. And I'm sure most of you have insurance of some kind on your homes, on your vehicles, on your life, on whatever. It's just smart, independent thinking. And boy, we don't have enough of that anymore. People don't, nobody thinks this way. A lot of people look at me like I've got 3 heads because I have a very well-stocked pantry, and I'm encouraging other people to have well-stocked pantries because
She's not kidding. She's not kidding.
No. But here's the thing, that old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Here's the thing. If I'm the only one in my village that can feed myself, I'm not safe. Those other people are going to go hungry, and I'm going to be in danger because I'm not going hungry. You see? So it's almost a selfish act on my part to try and talk other people into broadening their idea of what food is and where to get it, and to keep some in their home against need. So one of the things, I'm starting another group next week based in a church. So it's a church group. And one of the things I'm going to encourage them to do, and one of the things that we're talking about as our group, is to invest in some infrastructure that helps us. So I'm going to suggest to this church group that they buy a pressure canner and keep it in the church basement. They have a very well kitted out kitchen with lots of room. Yes, turn consumers into producers. Exactly. They could stock the big pots that are needed to do the water bath canning. So that not everybody has to put them in their little apartment or their little wherever their house is where there's not enough space. And you only buy it once. Everybody shares the cost of it, and you buy it once. So one of the things that we have a grain mill, but I think amongst the 20 or so of us that are in the Thrifty Kitchen group, we need another grain mill at least.
Because we listen to her, and then everybody gets out their phones and go, where can we buy one? Where can we buy one? So there's 6 of us buying stuff. It's like, okay, let's get together.
Yeah. The other thing that I'm going to encourage people to do is to learn how to do things without electricity. The electrical grid may be in some sort of precarious state. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that. I have several theories about the electrical grid. So we need to have hand tools. We need a hand butter churn to churn our own butter by hand. We need my daughter and son-in-law, his grandmother died a year ago at the age of 103. She made bread. She made 8 loaves of bread every week until she was, hey, bingo. This woman made 8 loaves of bread a week until she was 99 every week. And she had an enormous hand cranked bread machine. Huge. So you would have to go to an antique mall or something looking for this kind of thing. This is not not the sort of thing you can find in catalogs or whatever. It's an antique, you have to go looking for it. But it's a huge tub with a handle on the top, and that mixed the bread. It kneaded the bread and mixed all the ingredients together. So my daughter was really thrilled when they, started parceling out Grandma's stuff, Nana's stuff, that her husband was given the bread machine. So she's used it several times and finds it really, really quite efficient, like much nicer results than the electric ones. But go ahead and have an electric one too. Like don't curtail yourself, but just get used to using non-electric appliances, because we may be forced to do that at some point. A very long extended grid down situation or whatever. Or rolling blackouts where you can only use so much electricity for between certain hours of the day or the evening, or California is coming to that, quite frankly, right away, very soon, because of their lack of water in California. So tell me how much logic this makes, ladies. We like, like I said, our strawberries in January, but here's the thing. What California has done is tapped into ancient aquifers underground, and they are using that water to irrigate, because California is basically a desert. So they use their water, their ancient aquifer water, to irrigate produce, which they then ship out of the state. So what we're actually buying when we buy, celery and peppers and strawberries in January, we're buying California's water is what we're doing. And I don't think too many people realize that. It makes no sense. There's no logic to that at all, except if you're talking about dollars and cents, then it makes sense, right? It's exploitative, and I don't like that. To me, that makes food not taste good. If someone or something, if nature or people have been exploited, then that food doesn't taste right to me. It doesn't sit right in my belly. So I think we need a massive, this is going to sound really, we need a massive reimagining of what we eat and how we eat it. Massive. We need a massive reimagining on a scale that I can barely comprehend. I have a favorite author of mine. She co-authored a book back in 2008 or 9, something like that. Remember, there was a big crash. We had companies too big to fail. The governments were bailing out car companies and all kinds of things. We had a really, they didn't call it a depression. It was a really bad recession. And her solution to that was that the United States, with its 300 and whatever million people, needed to become a nation of 100 million farmers. So she said 1 in 3 people in the United States needs to become a farmer. And that's all well and good. What really wasn't addressed in the book, to my satisfaction, is that when you grow food, it takes a lot more time to prepare and preserve that food than simply going to a grocery store and buying it already done in a jar or a can or whatever, right? So not only do we need 100 million new farmers, we need like 100 million new homemakers that take that as a badge of honor. That if you're a homemaker, it's not just your home you're serving. You're serving our entire home, which is this planet. Or take it down small, your own community. You're serving the home, your home community that you live in, because you're not contributing to food waste. You're not you're not using plastic and contributing to the oceans filling up with plastic. I mean, it's just, but it's hard to get people to let go of their steady paychecks in order to do that. We have been lied to in so many ways, and the food system is really one of the biggest lies that's been perpetrated in the last couple of generations, to be honest.
So Mary Ellen's a good source for me to come up with ideas on how to help the community in the future. Like, imagine if you grow a garden and you don't know how to preserve it, but there's a place in your community that you can bring those items and they will be frozen however you want them preserved. The ladies in the kitchen with the fancy aprons can do that.
Yeah, with the fancy aprons, absolutely, the aprons. I call our group, because when we have our introductory workshop, I invite people to a BYOA party. So bring your own apron. That's what they have to bring, their own apron. And we wear them.
Yeah.
And some people say, well, I don't have an apron. That's okay. I got a dozen. I'll bring you an extra one. No problem. Because aprons are symbolic to me. When I put my apron on, my grandmother wore an apron every day of her life. And when I put my apron on, I'm hearkening back to all the things that she taught me, to all those wonderful feelings that I had being with my grandmother and my grandfather. He was a farmer and he grew the most amazing gardens you'd ever want to see in your life. So I'm sort of putting on the spirit of my grandmother, if you like. I actually have one of her aprons hanging with my aprons. So when I go to put on one of my own aprons, I give that one a little pat, because that's my grandmother's apron. She made it from a single flour bag, okay, a printed flour bag way back in the 30s. And it's too fragile. I can't wear it anymore. I should have brought it tonight to show you. But anyway, it's a homely, utilitarian, entirely beautiful thing to me. And so I give that thing a little pat every time I go to do something major and I put on my apron when I'm cooking or whatever, because that's important to know where we've come from. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I'm not sure where our time is. Like, if
I see, ladies, that it's 8:01.
Oh gosh, okay, there we
It's
are.
8:01. So I don't know if anyone has any questions.
I didn't know I could talk that long.
When you're
That's what
passionate
happens
about
when you're really
something.
passionate. Yeah. Sorry, I talked your ears off. I apologize.
No, I think that's a beautiful thing. And we're very, very grateful for you sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. And maybe for those who do have time to stick around, we could maybe do 15 minutes or 20 minutes of answering questions if there's some, because nothing like having them, hot off the inquiry energy to just ask away. So yeah, let me just see if I can get some raised hands here. Who would like to ask a question? Any hands going up?
I baffled everybody.
Well, I think you pretty well covered everything that is imaginable, which is pretty extraordinary in that short a time. So, Dee Dee, go ahead, Dee Dee.
Thank you so much for that. You got so much information. You're so funny. I loved it. I am wondering about human manure.
Yeah, I don't know. The gardener, my friend with the seeds, they have no indoor toilet. I'm a little leery of the human manure, to be honest, for the simple reason that so many people take so many drugs, and we have no idea what sort of drug residue is left there. He actually uses, they collect urine in the summertime.
Yeah.
And they use it as a starter in their compost pile. It will make your compost pile go nuts. Like, you can get compost very quickly, plant material compost very quickly, if you add urine to it when you're turning it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The human manure, there are books, the human manure handbook.
I know about it.
Like I said, I'm really leery of drug residues. That would be my biggest, and I would never use that on vegetables or fruit. I would use it only on my pollinator garden because
Okay.
there would be no sort of issue with disease or whatever
All right. Thank you.
contaminating the food. Yeah. Can't you want well rotted compost. Like I told you about my sheep barn bedding. That has been composted for probably 3 years before it goes in the garden. And you would never know, if I gave you a handful of that, you would never know it started as manure.
Okay.
Yep, because it has been totally decomposed. The bacteria and the fungi have done their job, and it is now soil. That's what it is. Very, very fertile soil. It's not manure anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Angel, you had a question.
Thank you so much, Mary Ellen. That was really wonderful. And I was curious, when you do your group nights, I'm going to plant a seed here, and your canning and information nights together, is there any chance they can be either Zoomed or recorded?
There's no internet.
We're not close to you guys, but are you interested in sharing that information when your group gets together?
Yeah, I don't know. I would have to take the pulse of the group. I'm assuming that some of them would not be comfortable being recorded. I would think some of them would not be. Yeah.
I was just
what I
curious
would suggest, yeah, I have mixed feelings about that.
Okay, no worries.
We might have to set it up as a more intimate session from, and call it Karen's Kitchen, and have you come and just do little bits of examples of it, so that.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
The thing is, I think, like, I don't know how proximal you are to her. Like, are you, most of you, in the same general area, or are you spread out everywhere?
We're kind of a little bit of everywhere.
A little bit of everywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
Because for me, the temporal knowledge, the theoretical knowledge,
Mhm.
really has to be under, the foundation has to be practice. And
Yeah.
so what I would advise you is to find me there. Find somebody that we're out there. Seriously,
Yeah.
we are out there.
Yeah.
But you might need to look. You might need to go looking for, I don't know, church suppers, farmers markets, something. You need to go looking for somebody who is willing to invest the time and the energy to teach neophytes how to do, like somebody, like I said, I was born on a farm. I'm 61. So I've been farming, gardening / whatever all my life, basically. And I still do things wrong. I still make mistakes and go, oh, stupid, that was dumb. Like, don't do that next year, like there's always, this is the thing. I would never get bored. I will never live long enough to learn everything I want to know about this, ever. It's not possible. Several lifetimes it would take to learn all this stuff. And you're still not complete, because every year nature throws you a curveball, every single year.
Mhm.
So you have to be willing to be adaptable and to not be married to your theoretical knowledge. Okay, it's really, really important to have the practical base underneath it. So that's why I say I'm a bit ambivalent about the Zoom things, because I can't call you over to the pot and show you what it looks like I did with Ken several times in the last 2 days. Okay, see, this is what's happening here.
Can you smell that?
Can you smell that?
Can you see that? Can you see compared to this one?
Yeah.
And I show up with my mason jars and my attitude, and we do
I
the work.
love her attitude. So yeah, so that's my biggest risk. It's not because I'm uncomfortable on the Zoom or whatever. Some of the participants might be to be recorded, but it's because to get a good grounding, excuse the pun, you really need to be working with your hands in the soil or whatever it is that you're doing. It's really, really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any more before we give a gracious farewell to our our speaker. Anyone else? No? No, I think you gave them lots to fertilize their inner garden.
Yeah. Oh, wait, there was a comment there and I missed it. It was really good. Yeah.
Here we go. Chat. Second.
In the chat, yeah. Foraging some of the weeds and yes, absolutely. So this thrifty kitchen or this community thing, it's not, the thrifty kitchen was the kickoff basically. So we're planning a broader sort of community meeting, like-minded people in September. And we're going to be talking about a number of things. Food is the most important, right?
Mhm.
Then we're going to be talking about things like exactly foraging, finding the wild food where it is, because there's lots of it out there. We're going to be talking about medicinal herbs. That is something that we're going to need a good knowledge of, and it takes a long time to learn that. And a lot of those medicinal herbs, a lot of what we call weeds are actually medicine, not just food, but medicine. So we're going to be talking about all those different, and then we're going to be talking about infrastructure and what it is that we need in order to look after our community. So one of the things I would like to see us as a community invest in is a freeze dryer. Freeze-dried food, fresh freeze-dried food will keep 25 to 30 years if stored properly in the absence of oxygen and heat and light. If it's stored properly, it will keep for 3 decades and it loses basically less than 1% of its nutritive value. So if you're starting off with really good food, 30 years from now, theoretically, you can open a package and you can add water to that, and it is as nutritious, almost close as the day you put it in there. So it's probably one of the best, but the freeze dryers are expensive. They're a bit pricey for one household to manage, and they're large. So they need a special building where they're housed. They're noisy, but it's an incredible way of making sure moving forward. And I think we're looking right now at multiple crop failures, especially in the American West. So yeah, absolutely. 3 gardens. Oh, wonderful. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then you get together and you know what? We can really look to some of the faith communities for ideas. So study the Amish. You know, get to know what their ideas and their techniques are, because they've got it all over us, trust me. One of the things that you are required to do if you're a Mormon and you adhere to the Mormon church, one of the things you're required to do is to keep a 1-year supply of food and water in your house for every person in your house all the time. You are required to do that. That's like a rule. So in Mormon country, they have huge community canning kitchens, and you can go there and you can either buy the food from them, or you can take your own garden produce or your own meat that you've bought from a farm or whatever, and you can go there and you can can it, commercially canned food. So that can sit on your shelf for a long, long time. Like we have best before dates on the cans at the grocery store, but please know that if you're buying canned food, and I would probably advise you to have a little bit as backup. If you're buying canned food and you've got an expiry date 3 years out, it's not an expiry date. You can double or triple that. And as long as the can is not damaged and it's kept in an even temperature, it's still good. There's nothing wrong with it. Canned food lasts a very long time. So these are some of the things we're going to talk about when we get together in September. It's basically where we are now is as individual families, like how to prepare for what we see is coming. You know, I'm privy to a lot of specific information because I read farm journals or, you know, magazines, that kind of stuff. I'm privy to farm statistics and so on and so forth. And it's not a pretty picture, ladies. Like we're in for some tough times. There's going to be food shortages. And the thing is, a food shortage doesn't necessarily mean that the supermarkets aren't going to be full. It may mean that the bottom 5% of our population simply can't afford what's there. And that pisses me off. Sorry for the language. It really makes me angry. There's no need of it. There's no need of it. Yeah. So I was telling Karen today and talking today, I keep what I call a blessing box, so that if I become aware of somebody in my community that's in that dire straits, I have things put away that I can give away. And it doesn't take away from my store. I have things that I can give away. So that's a very simple thing that anybody can do. If you have a little bit extra, you get $10 a week extra, it wouldn't be hard to put aside a blessing box in your house so that you can make sure that the people in your village aren't going hungry, because we're 9 meals away from anarchy. Don't ever forget that.
Yeah.
Food is really important. It's a spiritual thing. It's a physical thing. It's a social thing. It's so important, and it's being treated like it doesn't matter. And that pisses me off too.
Well, I think we all share your sentiments in that, because it has, we can see it coming, and we can see it has been happening for some time now. And when you know it's deliberately being done, that takes it to a whole new level of
A whole different level. Yeah, it's evil on the grandest scale.
Yeah.
And I don't know if any of you are familiar with this woman, Dr. Naomi Wolf. So she was a professor at, I forget which Ivy League university in the United States. Anyway, she got bounced out of her profession because she didn't agree with some of the mandates and things that have been handed down over the last 2 years. So she writes on Substack. So if you want some interesting reading, go find Dr. Naomi Wolf. And she was, I won't say atheist. She was a non-practicing Jew. Okay. And when she started pulling threads and putting threads together and looking at the big picture, she said, I started praying again, because an evil that is as all-encompassing as what I see can only be in opposition to a good that is more all-encompassing than the evil. So you cannot look at this evil. Her premise is you cannot look at the evil that's being perpetrated right now and believe that that's a coincidence. It is a coordinated spiritual whatever against the power of good, against God. So she has started praying again. That's become part of her daily practice again. And it took this, you know, because she said, all my logic tells me that an evil this big can only be in opposition to a God that's bigger.
So now you know why we're sisters of the apron.
Yeah, sisterhood of the traveling aprons. That's what I call us.
Well, thank you so much for gifting us with your presence and your wisdom. We truly, within this community, that is one thing that we cherish above all others. So we're very much appreciative, and Karen, continue to be mentored, because I can see that you will grow great things in the spiritual garden that you're in right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, everybody.
Good night,
it's been
everyone.
fun.
Good night. Okay. Yeah, if you want to just stay for a brief moment, we will do our closing prayer, because I feel that that is always a way of giving thanks and gratitude for what we have been blessed with. And we just breathe in the sense of fulfilling, and that knowledge and the wisdom that has been rained down upon us and activated within us. Let us all commit ourselves to taking it to the next level, or to the next step, and doing whatever little part you can to contribute to this community garden that we are all co-creating and building together. For we know that one on its own, it's a lot of work. And as someone who has lived a life of being the little red hen, I can tell you that the many hands that are starting to show up in my journey and my experience and my vision now are so incredibly welcomed and appreciated. And I think that each and every one of us can be more than gifted and blessed through this process when we learn to work together. For the outcome is truly worth every moment of what we are doing and how we are learning to be different. So for that, we give thanks and gratitude to all that is holy and divine. And today we celebrate most of all, and hold our hearts and hands open, and imagine ourselves placing them in the earth, so that the mother knows we're coming home and we're prepared to live the way we were designed to live. And so it is.
And so it is.
Thanks, everyone. We will talk to you again soon. I know there's a few of you I'll be meeting with this week, but the rest of you will see you next time. Take care. I'll just have my admin team stay